Okay, I got the 2016 Subaru Forester with the CVT. Now, what I've got is P0971, that pressure control solenoid C circuit high for the transmission. Got a C1431, which is a brake control, and then the sun load sensor, which is just anytime you pull it in the shade, that sun load sensor is going to throw a code. Now that sun load sensor is right there on the dash, so don't worry about that. The main thing is that solenoid right there and the brake control, which is also part of the solenoid. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace that solenoid in there. I've already had it out once. I bought a cheap eBay remanufactured solenoid valve body, and it was no good. So don't buy a valve body from eBay. They're just reselling probably Subaru's old cores. That's my guess. Just pull it out, do the ohms reading, and replace the solenoid yourself. You'll save yourself a whole lot of trouble. Just order yourself probably one 12 ohm solenoid and one 3 to 5 ohm solenoid. Those are really the only two solenoids that really go bad in these. But anyways, we're going to remove this air duct here just with these two bolts. It's missing this third one. There would be a clip right there. We're going to remove those. We're going to remove the back motor mount. It's like a T-bone looking thing. We're going to remove the metal mount for the engine that bolts to. We're going to remove those wires on the other side of it. And then we're going to remove the bolts on the outside of the housing. And then we're only going to remove the silver bolts on the inside on that valve body. So we'll walk you through this. All right, I just wanted to show you how basic this is. Okay, so right here you have an 8mm strap. You have an 8mm strap right there. You should have, I think it's a 10mm bolt, or maybe even a little snap ring, but this one's missing. Then you have a hose on the back here. That little hose clamps to there, so just make sure you grab some pliers. And always just remove the ground. I always forget to say that, but I just do it every time now. You don't want to hit a wrench on that starter and ground out your system or anything like that. Just put this off to the side. And then you can see the meat and potatoes back here. So you're going to remove this motor mount. So you could remove it from the top. There's actually a welded nut on this side. So you just back that side out. I believe it's 14mm. And then on the other side here, you're going to need a wrench and another socket, also 14mm. You're going to take this whole mount off. And then, if you can see, you're going to remove this whole metal mount. So you have the bolt down here, and then you have another bolt up here of all 14 mils. So you're just going to remove that and get it out of your way, so that way you can actually get to all these little bolts here, and you'll be able to get the solenoid valve body out without hitting anything. You do not actually have to remove the throttle body. The service manual does say remove the throttle body. I've gotten this thing out without removing the throttle body at all. It's just remove this mount here. But here's your clips. You could disconnect these. These are just push down, wiggle out. That's all they are. Oh, and every once in a while you'll have that happen. So I need two hands. I can't do that with a phone. But yeah, disconnect those. Also, this ground should be out of your way, so disconnect that ground. And then there is a ground right here. Make sure you put this back on. If you don't put this back on, none of your solenoids well, technically, none of your solenoids would work. They should. You should have another ground, but this just ensures that your valve body and your transmission is grounded. So just make sure you put that back on there. Okay, I wanted to kind of show the progress here. So we got this motor mount out. We got that ground wire out of our way. And if you look down here, we got this mount out of the way. So push this off to the side. Now you can start getting to some of these other bolts. So for this fiberglass shield, there's a 10 mil right there, and there is another 10 mil right down here. So this shield comes right off. And this, I don't think we're gonna be putting back on, because the last time I took this off, the whole underside is falling apart, and it just, as you can see, there's all this fiberglass dust just coming up. So I'm going to actually remove this, then blow everything off to make sure I don't get any of that inside the transmission. That's probably the biggest concern with this whole job. Do not drop anything or get any dirt or anything inside this transmission, because you just made things 10 times worse than a solenoid. So we're going to get rid of this 10 mil, 2 bolts, and then it'll come right out. And now we're going to also remove this ground. So there it is. All right, as you can see, this is what I'm talking about. This heat shield is disintegrated. It just fell apart, and there's all sorts of little fiberglass thingies that are coming off. So I probably should have covered that valve body with a glove. But yeah, there it is. All right, so I wanted to show you real quick. Also, don't forget, cover your valve body with a glove or something. Here's this fiberglass shield. As you can see, it's all torn up. It's not in good condition, and it just leaves a whole lot of dust particles everywhere it goes, as you can see on the screen, I'm sure. But yeah, we're not going to reuse this. That's going to go. All right, and since there was so much fiberglass dust, make sure you take some air. Look at all that. You don't want any of that getting into the transmission, so blow everything out that you can, and then continue working. All right, just a little tip. The best thing I found to do, put yourself some towels down and then some sweatshirts, lay on your stomach, and start ratcheting those bolts out. So they should be about 7 to 10 pounds. They're not very tight. It's just a pain to get the back 2 bolts out. You got to use a 1/4 inch ratchet, something kind of small, and just take your time. Okay, I got all these bolts out. I did not take this out. The factory service guide says to take this bolt out. There's really no point. I haven't found that you could even remove this harness anyways. But you're just going to lift this up, and then you're going to make sure you undo this harness right in here, this yellow one. So I need 2 hands. I'm going to put the camera down, but you're going to need to undo this harness. You might need a flathead screwdriver. You might not. You just push down on the top of this tab and pull that out. So that's what I'm going to do. All right, I got the harness undone. So now what you're going to do is you're going to lift this piece out off to the side here. It's going to come out, and there's your valve body. And on your valve body, you're going to remove these 2 black bolts, these 4 black bolts, this one, this one. I believe that's it. But these 2, and these 2. And this valve body should come right up. If I remember correctly, it's this one also. So it's these 10s that have this little dot on there. These other 10s don't have that dot. And it says 10 right on the head bolt with a dot on the bottom. 10 with a dot, 10 with a dot, 10 with a dot. So this one, not this one, this one, and this one. So look for the 10s with the dots. That's the only connection that I can make. Factory service manual also has a picture of which bolts to remove. But that's what you're going to do. Don't worry about this ground. This is actually attached to the valve body. So the only thing you're removing is this bolts. All right. These bolts should be really loose. Only about 7 to 10 foot-pounds tops, because it's going into aluminum also. But yeah, all these bolts are removed, and as you can see, this valve body's starting to wiggle. So I'm going to remove all these bolts and try and remember exactly where they go. We could always take a picture like I'm going to, so that we don't lose track of where these bolts go. All right, the valve body just lifts out. It's pretty simple. You're gonna need this gasket from Subaru, and then these 2 O-rings from Subaru. These I've just replaced. I just replaced these O-rings, and this gasket I also replaced. So we're gonna reuse this. Again, like I said, I bought a cheap flea bay valve body that was supposed to be reconditioned, and it was not. So as you can see, the transmission fluid is very dark. So we're gonna go ahead and call Subaru, and I believe it takes CVT 2, about 5.5 quarts, maybe 6 quarts. That's what I would buy 6 quarts, and yeah, we'll do the transmission fluid as well. But there it is. It's pretty simple. Just don't lose those O-rings when you take it out. They tend to drop. They do kind of float, so I was able to grab them. There is no gasket on this bottom half where the valve body touches. Let me show you the valve body. Okay, here's the valve body. Now, here's the solenoids. This one is supposed to be between 3.5 and 5 ohms. These are all supposed to be about 12 ohms when it's cold. These are all different with the exception of a little spacer that goes in between there. That spacer looks like this. So the all-wheel drive one has a spacer, and I think that is it. The other ones don't have the spacer. Now, I went ahead and saved some trouble for you guys. As you can see, this is a lockup solenoid. It says clearly made in China on it. Even though it said this is the OE, this is OE genuine part, right? It is not OE. I paid an OE price, but there's a solenoid. And oddly enough, here's another one. Also, it said this is OE solenoid. And there's a part number it gives on there for the TR580 TR690 transmission. And lo and behold, it is, voila, same thing. Same exact part, same exact packaging. I don't think you could get any different on the packaging. I mean, that might be, there's no difference. So just buy the solenoid as long as you know it's new. Buying the OE or supposed OE, you're going to get this knockoff junk. These do last a while. And from what I've heard, these things are all made in pretty much the same Chinese factory. Ford, Chevy, Hyundai, they're all ordering a lot of parts from China. China has really stepped up in the automotive parts industry, especially with COVID. So a lot of parts that you're going to find are manufactured in China. So test the ohms, make sure it's the correct ohms for your application, and cross your fingers. And just know that you might be doing it again, 50 to 100,000 miles. But these things should do fine. Subaru does not sell these solenoids. And I have found through my purchase that even when you buy the supposed OE, they still come in this crappy little box, and they are all from China. So I'll be using, I guess, this one. I'll use this one. There's really no difference. I'll measure the ohms first, but don't worry, buy the $38 one, because buying the $58 one clearly says right there, made in China, even though it says OE on the advertisement. I will not put a link to that in the description of this video, because I don't want that seller to try and sue me or something like that. But just know, OE versus Chinese, you're getting the same part. So now what we're going to do is we're going to remove this harness, and we're going to remove it in a couple places, but I want to show you. So you're going to remove this ground, you're going to bend this clip backwards, you're going to remove these two screws, and then on this back side here, you're going to remove all of these 10 mil bolts. Now what you're going to find, and I haven't found this on a YouTube video, I assume it's because of the embarrassment of messing up, there's a ground wire underneath this bolt, and when you turn it, it snaps. So as you can see, mine's been replaced. I will admit that I snapped it, and out comes this little piece along with the ground. So just be prepared. That's probably going to break. You're going to have to replace that ground. Plus, I think a lot of these issues are from that ground. So who knows? Maybe replacing that ground does some good and actually fixes some of the problems with this valve body. But there it is. We're going to get working on it. Okay, so I got the new solenoid in, and I just want to show you a couple things here. So that ground, what I was talking about, is this little piece right here. So right here on this little back bolt, it goes right down there, there's a ground. Now that ground, obviously you can see I've replaced that. I've had to cut and solder these two wires. It's just a jumper between these two solenoids for that ground. So just be mindful of that. I don't know if this was a problem from the factory, but this little clamp was barely on there, and it just broke right off. So I replaced it with a nice copper one, and it's solid. It's not going anywhere. Now, with these solenoids, so you're going to want to measure the resistance between these two terminals using a good meter. I have a old Fluke. This is an old Fluke. I got it at pretty much a garage sale. But we're going to put these two prongs in here. if I could do this one-handed. Pretty sure I can. Come on. Like using chopsticks. Okay. And we've got 3.9. So between 3.7 or 3.5 and 5 is roughly what we're supposed to be. So that's a good solenoid. That's a brand new solenoid anyways. So that's what it is. You just set your meter to ohms. You measure the resistance between those two. And you should be getting between 3.5 and 5. So this is good. We are going to now put this plate on there. Here's the old solenoid. Now, it does have this rubber gasket on here. This rubber gasket is just a spacer that keeps it locked in there nicely on this one. All the other ones do not have it. If you notice, they're all flush. But yeah, pretty basic. Now we're going to start putting this little shield back in. That goes down. You got to kind of wiggle it in there. And then we're going to get these bolts all back in there. And then we'll retest it from the other side to make sure that none of our wires got messed up. One other note, when you're reinstalling these silver bolts, there are two longer ones. The longer ones have nuts on the other side. They're pretty easy. One's going to be right here. If you look down, you can actually see the towel. You can see daylight. Okay. And then the other one, I'm pretty sure there's one more in here. It might actually be this one. Just can't actually see the towel. Yep, it's this one. So those two, they have the nut on the other side. So we're just going to flip that over and put those nuts on there. The rest of those should thread in. But those are the longer bolts. All right. So tightening sequence on this. There's nothing that I could find in the service manual that shows a tightening sequence, but just use kind of like the same principle as a head. Go middle, outside, cross, outside, cross, outside, cross. So just cross pattern it, and it's 7 foot-pounds. Not much to tighten these on there. It is on aluminum, so pretty basic. But yeah, there it is. That's installed. So now we're going to get these wires and then get this little clip doodad on there. This is the bad one. Here's the brand new one. So we'll get this all buttoned up and get this ground here put back on, and we should be good to go. Okay, so the last thing you do, check your ohmage right here. I've checked the ohms through the plug, so I know I've got a good solid ground in there. I'm correct on all my ohms. They're within spec, and everything is good to go. So I torqued down all those bolts, made sure that ground was attached, and these little Allen keys went back in. Now we are going to seat this back into the vehicle. All right, I didn't want to go through every single step because that would make for an extremely long video, but basically you're going to reinstall everything the opposite direction, right? You put that valve body in. I put it to 7 foot-pounds on the valve body on the inside, and then on the outside I put 8 foot-pounds on these little bolts here. It's aluminum, so it's really soft, and I want to strip it. I think the book calls for so many inch-pounds or whatever. 7 foot-pounds good enough for me. This clip also broke. That one's solid. This is solid. That mounts back in. Got my ground bolted back on here. Ground bolted back on here. Everything is good to go. Every single one of these bolts is tightened down. Gasket's been replaced and everything's ready. So I'm going to take this glove off here, and I'll just take a peek, see that valve body, how dirty it is on camera. And then yeah, we'll get this air intake tube back on, along with this little crankcase breather, and we'll get it up on the lift, and we'll do the relearn procedure. All right, before we do the relearn procedure, we made sure we're up, we're on the lift, our tires are off the ground just slightly. We're going to read and clear all the codes. You're going to have an air conditioning code. That's just that little sensor looking for some light. So that's no big deal. But we're going to leave the engine off, and we're going to clear everything out. When you're clearing everything out, you'll still have that air conditioning code. And then it'll tell you to turn the key off for 15 seconds. Yeah, mine didn't prompt me, but I know. Turn that key off for 15 seconds. Dealer software, I think, says 30 seconds, so we'll wait 30 seconds. This is a Launch Pro 431V. So we'll just wait. Alright, we've waited 30 seconds. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go over here to System Selection. We're going to go to Transmission. It's going to communicate with the transmission. Make sure your key's on, your engine's off. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to go over here to Special Function. You're going to clear the AT learning value. Yes. Yes. So now you've cleared the transmission code. Now it says turn the ignition off. And then execute automatic transmission learning again. So we're going to click OK. We're going to go to AT learning mode. It says turn the headlights off, air conditioner, rear defogger off. Basically all electrical stuff that might drain it off. Eco mode. I don't have eco mode. There's no eco mode on this. We got a seat heater though. Turn that off. Turn all these other doodads off. Then we're going to turn this on. So, on this model, okay, now it says warm up the transmission. It's 26 degrees, so it's pretty cold. So we're just going to let this warm up until it's ready to go. We'll make sure everything is off. That transmission light will flash while it's in this mode. And we're going to turn this radio off as well. Make sure the headlights are off. So everything is off. So that's just because I started the vehicle. But we're going to let this thing warm up. Okay, we should be getting super close. And now we're at 40 degrees. So, it should prompt us. There we go. Lift vehicle up. Put the parking brake on. Okay, we lift it up. We hit OK. Turn off the ignition switch. Okay. Start the engine. Turn off eyesight if quit. Press OK. We're going to start it. Well, forgot here. We are relearning a throttle body also since everything has been reset. Turn the key on, don't start it. Wait a second, start it. Yep. Come on, puppy. Takes a minute to relearn that throttle body. There we go. Now we're working with it. Hit OK. Fully depress the brake pedal. Keep pressing. Okay. Once engine stabilized, select D range. Engine stabilized. Select D range. Continue stepping on the brake pedal. So right now it's learning those solenoids. It's basically measuring pressure, resistance, and everything else. You can hear it. Alright, now keep pressing the brake. Select to reverse. So go to reverse. Okay. Alright. Now select neutral. We're going to select neutral. Now it says turn off the ignition switch. Okay. We're still pressing on the brake. We're still in neutral. Now it says start the engine, turn off eyesight if equipped, then press the OK button. We're still in neutral. Still got the brake pressed. It'll take a minute to relearn this throttle body. There we go. Alright. Press OK. AT learning normally ended. Now, put this puppy in park. We'll hit OK. And that's it. Now the transmission learning mode is done. It's going to learn your drive habits still, but the main learning for park, reverse, and drive and neutral is all done. So you do need a scan tool to do this, and it does say it needs to be on a lift. I don't know why, because you're pressing the brakes the entire time and you are leaving the emergency brake pressed. So I don't know, maybe you could do it without a lift, but I just feel more comfortable following the stupid instructions and putting it on the lift. So there it is.